Welcome to the Portugal Chronicle podcast. Compelling stories, interesting places, real people. And now your hosts, Mafalda Costa and Tracy Dynasson. Bem-vindos ao podcast da Portugal Chronicle. Histórias fascinantes, sítios interessantes, pessoas reais. E agora as vossas apresentadoras Mafalda Costa e Tracy Dynasson.
Hello and welcome to the Portugal Chronicle. This is our second podcast. I am Tracy Dynasson here with Mafalda Costa, one of our wonderful reporters and members of staff here. We've done some interesting reporting over the last week. You've had the ability to go and check out Gerador Uncover, which sounds like a fascinating festival. And that was held in Guimarães. So what can you tell me about the festival itself and why they chose Guimarães out of all of Portugal to hold this festival?
Okay, so Uncover is a festival that was created and held by Gerador. Gerador are an independent media platform, Portuguese independent media platform. And the festival was all about image and the power of image in all of its forms. So they had a bunch of panelists, and we had artists, renowned artists like Dred Scott, talking, as well as Neil Harbison, who was the first person to be officially recognized as a cyborg, talking. They had architects, they had, so many different artists talking about image and how they use it in their work. So it was really, really interesting. So Gerador happened from the 13th to the 16th of March in Guimarães. It took place on a bunch of different venues. And why Guimarães? Well, this was what we heard from the organization. So Guimarães is a place where, even though we're a small city, culturally we are really active and proactive. So you see lots of things happening here all the time. So it's a city that is really open to receiving festivals that are intending to do something different, get outside of the box. So I think that's mainly why they decided to do it in Guimarães. And it worked. I think that they are planning on hosting more editions of this festival in the coming years. The idea is to maintain the topic of image, expand it maybe. I think they've done a good job for a first edition of a festival like this. It was really good.
We think about image, in and of itself as being an image itself is something that you can actually analyze in so many different ways, and it has so many different touch points. And you were able to talk with some of the artists in particular about their use of image and their motivations and their use of voice. What are some of the things that you heard that really kind of impacted you?
Yeah, I would say, so Dred Scott, he's a North American artist, and he's done some really spectacular work. And we had a conversation we talked about different things, but one of the things that really stuck with me was I asked him what had motivated him to become an artist.
I guess that I couldn't look away. I mean, the great Indian writer Arundhati Roy said, once you've seen something, you can't unsee it. And I mean, as a kid, I like Star Trek, and particularly I like Mr. Spock. He was this alien on this human spaceship, but he was the height of rationality, and he really wanted to know why. I, as a kid, always wanted to know why. So I, was just always looking for answers and couldn't look away. And then once you think you understand something, you do have a responsibility to try and change it. I mean, if you thought that you had a way to cure a terrible disease, wouldn't it be your responsibility to try and provide that answer for people? I can't unsee what I've seen, and I, through an accident of history, am able to turn that into art. And so then it's And honestly, I'm also more afraid of what happens if those of us who understand something don't act than if we do.
It sounds like it was a very powerful experience, and that it's wonderful that you were also able to talk to artists themselves. I mean, I know that you are an artist and you do a lot of those things, so it's great that you have that connection. Um, and I know that there's also a lot of things going on, not just in Guimarães, but in Braga as well. What are some of the things that we have coming up this next weekend or over the next week so people can be thinking about it? And what are you seeing out there in the art and culture community?
Okay, so we have a couple of things happening in Braga this weekend. On the 29th, they are having Contra Kiosk. So it's an event where artists have taken over some kiosks in the city of Braga and have turned them into exhibition venues. So that's happening on the 29th. Very curious to see how that's going to work. There's also the Centrar, so that's an event that wants to bring people, it wants to bring culture to the outskirts of the city, to smaller freguesias. So it's really worth checking it out because they're doing really cool stuff. In Guimarães, we are going to have Westway Lab on the second week of April, and we're really excited to do that. We're going to be covering the festival, so it's big, guys. You really have to check it out.
Well, and when we're looking at this is a wide variety. So Contra Kiosko's got all different kinds of artists. And why do you think they're taking over kiosks? Like what would a kiosk? Why that? What do you think?
Well, there are, I would say, first and foremost, these constructions have been sort of abandoned. So they have the infrastructure there. This is what I assume. They have the infrastructure there already. And I don't know, it's really interesting to be able to take such a small place, small construction, and turn it into part of an art installation. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how people actually take these kiosks and make them into experiences and transform them because it's a completely blank slate, right? So I think that will be fascinating. And then when we're looking at the cultural events in the outskirts of Guimarães, bringing things to the small freguesias or the aldeias, I think that that's fantastic as well. It's one of the things that, if you live in a very small town and say you don't have a car and you don't use the bus, you've got a small town that's self-supporting, that might be something that you're missing. So I can imagine that among population that this would be really important, especially with the older population that don't tend to leave town as often, right?
Yeah, Guimarães had an initiative like that a couple of years ago, and they're doing it again, called Centricidade. So they would bring artists. At the time when I was part of it, it was just musical artists. I'm not entirely sure what they're doing this year. And Gerador in Braga, it's not just music. They're doing, movie showings and activities, workshops. They're doing a bunch of different things. So at the time, I played in a small parish of Guimarães, very small, and I remember all of the audience members were people over, I would say, 65, 70. And that was not the audience I was used to. And at the time, I was only writing in English. So it was really cool to see how this crowd reacted to the music. Most of them didn't understand English, so they would ask me, like, at the end of the concert, I remember them asking, like, why do you write in English? I don't know, it's cool to see that, and I think for artists to have that interaction with the elderly, and it's really interesting to see that dynamic of having new artists and older populations. I think it's really important to have that.
Well, and you were also a part of Westway Labs, which, can you explain that to us a little bit? Because I think that when we think of Westway Labs, it sounds very clinical, but it's quite the experience.
Yeah, so Westway Lab, essentially, they do three things. So they have the residency scheme, and here they have artists They have Portuguese artists paired with international artists. This year there are 4 pairings, and that group works together in a house. They do a residency for about a week in Candoso, in Guimarães. So the experience of being in the residency, and that's what I was part of last year, is very peculiar. I think everyone that has done it, and I have friends that were part of the residency, all of them loved it. It's one of those experiences that stick with you. And it's really intense. You're paired with someone you've never met before. You're speaking not in your first language, because you're speaking English, I would say. And then you have 5-6 days to create a 30-minute long concert with this person that creates in a way that is very different from yours, that might create in a language that isn't yours, that plays instruments you don't know how to play, that might even be doing music in a whole different genre. So it's very peculiar, but it's really, my experience personally, I loved it. I was paired with an American artist, Zoe Berman. We were the best friends. We became the best friends. It was really cool to work with her. And it's just, artists and musicians, everyone creates differently. The way you listen to music. During Uncover, we spoke to Gisela Mabel, who's a pianist, really worth listening to. And she talked about how she uses music to express her feelings, and she's very visual when she's writing music. And for me personally, I listen to the music and then I just try to transcribe it. So every artist has their own way of creating music. So having that being put together with someone that creates differently from you, it's a challenge. And then having to create a concert with them, it's a whole different challenge. So you have that residency. And at the end of that week, everyone presents their concert and it's open to the public. So anyone can see it and it's free. So it's really cool to have that. So that's one part of the West Bay Lab. Then they have the part that is more for the music industry, I'd say. So that's, if you work in the music industry, it's really worth going to. They have panels, they have workshops. So they talk about all things related to the music industry, publishing, licensing, streaming, all of those things.
I find it fascinating that you actually were talking about, the idea of music and its impact on image. That kind of brings us back to Gerador Uncover, right? And so you talked to Dred Scott and he talked about his own music in and of itself, right? And his use of music, doesn't he? So what were some of the things you learned from him? Like, how does that play into his art?
I think that, I asked him a question that I think he liked. Because during his panel, he mentioned songs. He name dropped songs. So you could really, and then when I talked to him, it was obvious that there were some influences when he was a teenager that really changed him as a person, as an artist. So there were some bands and artists that changed him, some books, some movies. So there were definitely things that made him the artist that he is. And I asked him, and then I think you all can listen to it, I asked him to make a playlist for us in Portugal to listen to, not only in Portugal, but related to what's happening in Portuguese politics with, our government. So a playlist of songs to listen to while your government is crumbling. And he made quite a playlist, so I think we should listen to that as well.
Start with Change Is Gonna Come, the Sam Cooke version. Go with Public Enemy's Fight the Power. Nina Simone, For Women. Kendrick Lamar, All Right. And The Clash, Clamp Down.
Absolutely. We'll make sure we have that list for everybody so that we can pull it together. You can create your own playlist in your preferred music streaming service, whatever that is. And yeah, I think let's see if it impacts you as much as it impacted him. I think that you have done some amazing work, some great conversations, really gotten a lot of deep information from artists and from directors. And so that's been fantastic. I look forward to seeing what else comes up. For those of you who are out there, please hit subscribe. Make sure that you follow us on Instagram. Make sure you follow us on Facebook. You subscribe on Substack. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you know when we release our next episode. And from there, we will see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Portugal Chronicle podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe and follow us on social media. Obrigada por ouvirem o podcast da Portugal Chronicle. Certifiquem-se de subscrever e de seguir as nossas redes sociais.